Hi everyone, here we are again, once again, testing that 200 SMA, the same number that gave us this massive sell here at this next turn. Are we here once again looking for a massive sell off of this zone here? That is what we are going to take a look at. So let's take a look at all of the charts as we head into tomorrow's session of trading. Do me a quick favor and like and subscribe and watch the video till the end to help out the channel, and let's get started. In news today, we got Michael Burry launching a newsletter to lay out his AI bubble views after deregistering his hedge fund. This guy has been trying to short the AI bubble and short big tech for basically forever. Made a little bit of money here and there, maybe. But basically he said the bubble is going up too high and I cannot continue to play these markets. So he decided to close his fund, and now he's launching a newsletter to basically lay out his thoughts on this for $379 a year. Interesting. Really, I just wanted to highlight this because I really think honestly that he's probably right. I think he's just a little bit too early and he was probably trying to play too big and the fund was getting crushed under that kind of a weight. But I do think it's interesting. They say AI companies, of course, are obviously very profitable, and it's a very different thing from kind of boom and bust things in the past, like the dot-com era, and of course the 2008 crisis, which he was very famous for being successful trading to the downside when basically nobody else was, of course, with the big short. But I think honestly he's a little bit early, and I think he'll probably be proven right, but probably not to the same scale that he was in the past. Moving over to Fear and Greed, we're at a 14 from a 10, still very, very little bounce despite the pretty significant move we've seen since the Friday into the Monday. Momentum still in fear. Strength continues to kind of flatline here. Extreme fear on that. Breadth. Want to see how that did today. We did get a slight continuation. Put call ratio coming back down slightly, but still very elevated there. Volatility came down pretty significantly as well. Not a ton of volume there, so I didn't expect it to stay very elevated, which is very consistent on Mondays. And then you can see safe haven demand spiked up just a little bit. Junk bond demand still pretty flat. Moving over to the economic calendar, basically nothing for today. And then looking at tomorrow, we do get corn headline, PPI, retail sales, fairly interesting. We'll see how all of that plays out. Consumer confidence also coming out tomorrow. Definitely like to see all of that data coming out more consistently and on time. And then for the Wednesday, we get PCE, corn headline, core and headline durable goods orders, as well as GDP. So while it might be a short week, there is still quite a bit of data this week. Moving over to the charts here, you can see we are right at that zone of resistance, right at the 200. That is right where we touched last time and rejected down several percentage points. We came here and we've hesitated at that zone. Very, very critical level. Of course, you don't see any of that here on the daily chart, which is why it's important to watch multiple time frames where you could be finding resistance. Certainly a lot of complexity in that, but I tend to watch the hourly and the daily, and this is a key zone. It was key zone here, another key zone here. If we reject from here, you should expect at the very least a higher low, probably at least a double bottom. And then if this is going to continue, of course, you could certainly get that lower low. And then what does that ultimately look like? Could be pretty terrible. Well below that 653 level. The next one for me, 644.22. And that would take you through this kind of neckline of the head and shoulders that we've been watching. Moving over to the SPY charts here, you can see that push up to that 34 EMA. That is a zone of resistance on the daily chart as well. You can see 668.80, we're right at that level, right at that 21 EMA there as well. Interesting to see that 21 EMA being so different on the Tasty charts versus the charts that we saw on the TradingView charts. Usually they're pretty close, but that's a pretty significant difference right there at the 21, right there at the 34 EMA as a zone of resistance. If this rejects your lowest ATR band, target would give you somewhere around 646.22 right in here, and that would take you below that 89 EMA, which did hold as support as well. So that would be very much a downtrend that we should expect to last more than a couple of weeks, in my opinion. But of course, on the short time frame here, you can see we pushed through that 144 EMA, pushed to the upper band, and this is short term a bullish structure. We're just waiting to see if those zones of resistance break or if we do reject off of them and look for those lower lows. Moving over to the NASDAQ here, you can see that same kind of setup. We're coming into that 200 SMA area, tagged that level perfectly on the NASDAQ. Actually looked a little bit cleaner on the NASDAQ, almost like the NASDAQ is driving price, where the SPY chart did overthrow it. The NASDAQ did not tag that level perfectly, and you can see we're right at it here once again. 607.49 is that zone right here. We're also right at a trend line, a very important trend line. You can see it here. Marked this bottom pretty cleanly, marked the bottom here. Once we got through it, that looked awful. Got a quick retrace, and now we're here again. Breakdown, retest. If this rejects here, that is going to be absolutely catastrophic, right? Definitely a major turning point in markets if that rejects from that trend line. I don't necessarily believe that's going to happen quite yet. I'm still looking for this kind of left shoulder head, right shoulder forming, still looking for that right shoulder, a tag of that 611 area. The kind of fake out would be this candle here from the 20th, right, where we came in, tagged that level already and then rejected. Do we get a second tag of that level and then a rejection potentially? I think there's a lot of questions in that, but of course this 200 is going to be key. Want to move this right to it here. We'll see if this zone, if we get through it, get through that 611 area, we're right near it. You can see we're already overbought on the hourly chart after these 2 days of rally. Push through the 55, push through the level. Everything looks pretty bullish in the short term, but of course you have this consistent downtrend over the past several weeks, which looks pretty awful. A lot of the buying opportunities so far have turned into sells, and that is definitely concerning on the buying side. Moving over to the Tasty charts, of course, you got this big push here today, pushed overextending itself above those upper ATR bands. Everything looks super bullish. And then looking at that daily chart again, you can see that 21 EMA, 34 EMA right in there next to each other, very close together. Not seeing those on the trading view charts. I wonder why they're so separated. But right here, zone of resistance, if this rejects here, which you would expect it to if this is going to be a continuation downtrend, that would give you a target to that lowest ATR band, which right now is 580. That would be a nice fall of about 25 points, pretty significant fall, which is pretty substantial rally we've had really over the last 2 days. You can see 15 points just today, but 25 points to that zone, and then the 144 EMA would be your next support down around 573. Moving over to the Russell and the Dow, you can see the Russell positive 1.83%, got that big continuation as we expected. We said the candle on the Friday was super strong, and we expected to get a strong push today, and we sure enough did. Went right to that next zone, 241.05 is the resistance, 21 EMA there at 241, and it is pushing towards that area. I suspect that we'll probably touch that area tomorrow, and then we'll see what happens. Do we get a pullback, maybe a higher low setup continuation, or start to get that cut through, double bottom, something like that, right? Starting to get just a little extended in the short term. And then we need to see what the structure is going to be here. And then looking at the Dow, really didn't do much movement at all. Up 0.4 or $1.87, 55 EMA, 9 EMA zone of resistance, tagged that area and pretty much stopped on the session. Moving over to the Mag 7. Mag 7 found some legs today. Really, this was just all Google, but we'll take a look at that later. Google had a massive day, and you can see on the day 3.29% pushing towards 357, pushed through that area right to this trend line, this downtrend line we've been watching, and stopped right at it. Are we going to get through that and push, or is this going to be another zone of resistance? You can see good volume on the session. Had massive volume on the sell, massive volume on the doji candle, massive volume on the up candle. So maybe this is a little bit of a base in here. That'll be interesting. If we start to see these reverse, you have to be open to the idea that this is a solid base, and then we do have a potential for a little bit more upswing. I've been kind of in the topping pattern camp for a while, but you got to keep your mind open. We tagged that zone of support at the 144. So far it's been a decent zone of support, and it is short-term bullish. Moving over to Apple and Microsoft, you can see Apple up 1.63% right to that level. 275.92 is the closing price. 275.91 was the level, and you can see 275.87 after hours down just a tiny bit, but very important here. If we can get through there, it's going to be a rocket to new all-time highs. And I think this is technically an all-time high close, maybe not an all-time high on the wick side. Either way, if we get through here, very, very bullish. And then you can see Microsoft continues to kind of hang in this zone of support, 200 SMA sitting there at 465.28. I think that is absolutely a nice area to risk off of. I think you could kind of use this 466 level as well as a zone of support. As long as we kind of hold this area, we could look for a push back to 506 potentially. Get that lower high set up here off of this area all the way up around 550, lower high kind of in here, and then we'll see, do we get that bigger sell? But for now, it seems like we're finding support around 466. Moving over to Tesla and NVDA. NVDA actually kind of lagged today. You can see it was up about 2%, but this has been one of the strongest stocks in the market, and it was not up that much. And look at the after hours pricing. I wonder what's going on with that. I did not see anything in the news. Why would it be down so much? We closed at 182.55, after hours price 178. 70. Big sell there after hours. Put it down in the comments if you know something. Otherwise, Tesla, nice candle, 6.8%. Got back above the level 414.50. Nice base in here. Nice candle up. Can we get through this area here? Of course, around that 430 area. Trend line in here around 426. This is going to be a tough zone of resistance here, but if it can get through it, that would be pretty bullish here, and I do like that momentum stepping to bullish. I think Tesla has some legs in it for tomorrow. Moving over to Alphabet and Meta. Meta did find just a little bit of a base here, finally showing an up candle. You can see it's engulfed the previous week already, which is interesting, back above that 602.95 level. Definitely showing some signs of life here on the daily chart as well. You can see up candle Friday, step to bullish momentum for the first time in a long time. Look at this fading momentum, nice little bounce there, interesting. But of course, the big story is Google, absolutely massive, up 6.28%, $18. Continues to rocket. Look at the after hours price action up even more. Something massive happening. Maybe the positivity around Alphabet is what's causing NVIDIA to potentially lag, but just look at this ramp, absolutely massive, just continues to be a rocket ship. Didn't think it would be this strong, even during the session, going up another $7 or about 2% during the session after the gap up, just absolutely huge. We said this was a bull flag breakout here, got the retest, got faked out on it, which was super upsetting. Otherwise, I'd still be in this. Otherwise, of course, it looks very bullish. Moving over to staples and discretionary. Staples down 1.16% there. Momentum fading just a little bit. Still kind of chopping to the bull side. Is this a breakdown, bear flag breakdown potentially? Interesting kind of setup there. That would be not super great, of course, for staples. And then look at discretionaries, slightly positive, getting back above 227. So you have a level of risk off of there. Right at the SMA is a zone of resistance. Still looks like kind of a retest of the midpoint area, and then potential for a sell-off there. I'm not saying that everything is back to bullish by any means, but there are some signs of life across markets. Moving over to breadth, this is not super reassuring to me. You can see 20-day breadth hit that 50 point and then rejected from there. Very slightly positive, but not in the way that you would expect. If this was going to be a breakout to the upside, would need to see a little bit more conviction there. Same here on 50-day, hit that 21 EMA and kind of held at that area. Nothing crazy, nothing changing the thesis of bearish breadth. Moving over to the dollar. Dollar continues to be sideways choppy here. It's still holding above the level 99.83, so that continues to be really good there. And then you can see doji candle on the day. Same doji candle really as the Friday. Maybe less volume this week, but shouldn't be too much less. Still have the rest of the world trading dollars here, but it's hanging out sideways, choppy, pullback in time. As long as it kind of holds this area, should be good. Want to see these zones of support continue to catch up here over the next couple days. 9 and 21 EMAs were above the 200 daily as well, which is super bullish. As long as all of those continue to hold, we should be bullish for the dollar. Moving over to JNK and TLT, both of these finding a little bit of legs here. JNK up about 0.3, and then TLT up about 0.5% there. Nice little bounce off of this solid base at the level. Like that. You like to see it. This still could be a left shoulder head, right shoulder here, but I do think there's going to be a little bit of legs in TLT. I've been bullish TLT for a long time. Momentum swinging to bullish, RSI swinging to bullish. Got a decent base here. You could argue maybe low, higher low setup here potentially. It's very slightly higher low from here as well. Might see a little bit of bullishness out of TLT, looking for this to go to 92.82. Moving over to volatility. Volatility sold off a little bit more after spiking to that same area. Still holding a slightly higher low here. I think we're probably going to hesitate in here and hold and look for a bigger push, which means we could be very close to that, maybe 1 or 2 more days, tag that area and then get that bigger spike up. Still have not had that kind of culmination spike on volatility. Really nowhere near it. Moving over to my accounts, I traded in and out of some short puts on the Russell, just one to the bull side on both of those, and then traded out of them at the end of the session. Of course, those were positive, closed pretty much on the high of the session. Thought about rolling out to tomorrow, but you can see those zones of resistance that we talked about really across markets, and I just didn't feel good about it. This is still kind of medium-term bearish for me, and I don't like trading counter trend or holding overnight against the trend, which I still think is ultimately going to give us that lower high and then the bigger sell, which I think is a bigger opportunity. But in the short term, I did make a little bit of money on the bullish day that I did expect. Otherwise, still holding this dollar position, looking for the dollar to go higher. Did not move at all today. Let me know down in the comment section what you think of Michael Burry's newsletter. Are you going to sign up for it? Do you think that's a reasonable price? Let me know. Otherwise, like and subscribe if you got any value out of this video. Make sure you hit the bell so you don't miss out on any future episodes. Of course, none of this is financial advice. This is all for entertainment purposes. Good luck in your trading and have a great day.